Hello and a very warm welcome to you all. I'm Vikas Nangia with another episode of CyberWatch. Ladies and gentlemen, we continue to be in conversation with our guests from the previous episode. Yes, this is the part 2 of our topic, securing critical infrastructure. My first guest on the program has flown in all the way from Southern California, Margareta Petrovic. Margareta is the Global Managing Partner for Risk and Cybersecurity Consulting at TCS. My second guest has flown in all the way from Dallas, Texas, a familiar face on our network and industry veteran, Lalit Ahluwalia, the founder and CEO of DigitalXForce and iTrustXForce. Lalit and Margareta, thank you so very much for joining us for the part 2 of securing critical infrastructure. So there was a lot of curiosity amongst the viewers. They wanted to understand more about their role, in day-to-day life, and also about various other vulnerabilities attached with critical infrastructure. Lalit, I'd like to get started with the conversation with you. This year happens to be a very significant year for elections. And everybody is looking news every day. And tell us the critical infrastructure, how pivotal role it can play over here if things go haywire.
So I think because the critical infrastructure in play here is nothing but the election systems, the core of our constitution, democracy. And this is not happening just in US alone. It's happening around the world, like major elections happening. And everywhere you go, this is the hot topic, the election system or system infrastructure security. Now, we're going to combine it with two topics now, AI and the threats of AI and the critical infrastructure security, because that's important here.
Right.
When it comes to election system infrastructure, because it falls under public sector or the government arena, and we all know how underserved that sector has been and underfunded that sector has been, they're still dealing with like 10 years old, 20 years old, 30 years old legacy infrastructure, which doesn't scale to the new forms of security, which means they can be easily compromised or do not have very sophisticated lines of defense. Now, when you're relying on that systems, that itself is a vulnerability on its own. And attackers can find very easy ways to really, compromise those systems. Now, while we're talking about the election system infrastructure, like hacking itself and the machines getting compromised, or how the data is being transferred between machines to the central, analytics centers. The other information that can influence in the elections context is the AI security,
right.
Misinformation, or the influence by really imitating something, wrong messages, which is on the social media and compromising that.
Right.
That's another extension of the critical infrastructure where I can influence the results by really compromising those systems as well.
Right.
Put them together, this is definitely an issue that we all have to tackle very diligently and proactively.
Margareta, what are your thoughts?
Absolutely agree. There is a big element in securing the systems used for voting itself, for the election systems, but also impacting the voters, people that have a say into exercising our democratic rights, so that they're doing something that normally wouldn't be done. So, for example, spreading fake news, impersonating people, spreading fear, doing some social engineering attacks. All of those are very valid threats in terms of cybersecurity, and that can have large consequences about all of us.
When we talk about the upcoming elections, what kind of threats, cyber threats are there, Lalit?
So, let me first exemplify this cross-nation hack. Some people might remember there was a hack that happened with Sony a few years back. And there were a lot of Hollywood celebrities, and their data was stolen.
Right.
Including some of the personal remarks they made on the actors or actresses or the directors and what they think. And that created a big news headlines.
Correct.
Because they penetrated through that channel and then got all the data,
right.
which made a lot of news. Guess what? Nation A attacked the nation B and crippled the whole internet and the data services there. For a whole week, there was no internet. That was an example of like how, if you wanted to, you could have done that.
Right.
Now, the same pattern that was one motivation or one reason. We're already seeing the cyber warfare. That is a term that we're using.
Correct.
People are now more scared of the cyber warfare when any attack or the country-to-country war happens than actually the physical war. Because you will have people like fighting like, like Army, Navy, whatever you want to call it, but the damage is limited to like what's on the borders or on the attack. But when cyber warfare happens, everything is on stake. And when you like really are motivated as a country, as a national agenda, they're motivated like for various different reasons, and they don't care what's ethical or not ethical.
Right.
When you cross those boundaries and you have the weaponry that can really cripple you with infrastructure, and you got all the tools, imagine what's going to happen.
Right.
And for the nations that are very well funded, they can actually launch a very major havoc. Today, there is still some sanity, but there's no prevention tomorrow if they really decide, I'm all out for a war here.
We'll take a quick short break over here. On the other side of the break, we'll resume our conversation with Margareta and Lalit. Viewers, you stay tuned. Margareta and Lalit, you be with us. We'll be right back after these messages. Lalit and Margareta, once again, welcome to TV Asia's CyberWatch, and we appreciate all the information, the insight that you're giving on critical infrastructure. It is very, very important in this present day and age. Keeping up with the momentum of our previous episode, I want to talk over here about the role of citizens in avoiding failures and disruptions when it comes to transportation, water, energy, and more so from the private companies, when you have to deal with the consumers as well, with the citizens as well, and with the government. Let's talk about the challenges, as we mentioned in the previous episode. In this episode, we'd like to touch upon the challenges.
So the challenges are primarily coming from funding when it comes to the governments and when it comes to the public sector, which brings the limitations in creativity, how much you can actually improve existing, maybe stale infrastructure that we just discussed, maybe not even having the right skills, the right training to keep up with the industry trends.
So basically the manpower we are talking about, and the right tools as well.
Tools and training. There are many talented people working in public sector. They just don't have enough of funding, time and investments to keep up with all the new technologies.
Right.
And new technologies are coming with new attacks. There are a lot of attacks to the old technology. So in order to be protected, you have to have well-rounded understanding about the full ecosystem.
Right.
And that's where private sector can come on stage and bring additional skill set, additional sources of information and technology to bridge the gap. So that is definitely one of the avenues.
So Vikas, let me even take it a little back, okay, step back. How many people understand definition of critical infrastructure? Let's talk about that first. How many people really understand what are the threats and the risks pertaining? See, generally we can talk all day long.
Right.
The biggest issue is you can only tackle a problem when you understand the problem. And I don't think so enough work has happened on that either.
To raise the awareness.
To raise the awareness and understand where the critical gaps are. And
awareness is the first action of defense, actually.
Exactly. Because then you can really kind of start like having a game plan around it.
Correct, correct.
It's an irony that the government sector is so under, funded and everything when it's at the critical mass, so no private businesses will run without really having a good, and they actually process the most sensitive, critical transactions.
Right.
And still, they're served like, as if it's happening. Chale do, jo ho raha hai. Sarkari do mat. You have to overcome that thought process now.
Right.
You gotta like start privatizing. In fact, I'll go like saying when the private industries, X amount of money should flow back into the government because they're basically promoting them. And that way then you can bring some of the brightest talent. What Margareta was talking about, skills and training, look at what the private sector pays to the same skill versus what government sector pays for the same skill.
Right.
There's a day and night difference. Why would somebody want to work in the government sector compared to the private sector? On the other hand, Do you pay the same amount of money and they are given similar challenges? They want to always work on that sector. That's where some of the big differences really come in. Now, technology, tools, of course, we have to really keep at par. But when you don't even understand the problem and you don't have the talent, of course, the second problem is I don't understand which tools and technology I'm going to apply.
Correct.
Even if I was lucky enough to get funding for applying, who's going to deploy and manage that? The third thing, which I would like to say, is after, let's say, you did all of that, are you keeping at pace with what the bad actors are thinking?
Right.
They're going to still outpace you, even if you got at par. Even if you got caught up, you're still going to be outpaced.
Right.
These are some of the fundamental problems I'm talking about without getting into the nitty-gritties of how you can overcome.
In the present phase of globalization, you see, when we are talking about, let's say, United States, which has majority of the resources, it is still not able to combat in its fullest strength. What about the developing nations? They have already, started embracing the technology at the same pace, as the developed nations. But what are their backup plans? I mean, that seems to be the most challenging situation.
But even we have some very basic problems.
Right.
Not every problem is going to be solved by throwing in more technology. In fact, it's just adding more complexity and throwing more oil into the fire. There are some problems that are related to critical infrastructure that can be very simply solved. So, for example, I live in Southern California. We have frequent fires. One of the problems that we have with the fires is that it's difficult to isolate part of the networks. And your power grid that is hit by heavy wind and part of the wire gets down, it hits overly dry vegetation, easy sparkles, and fires are just going enormous. They create a lot of damage to the nature. It creates a lot of damage to the people's
and
properties.
This happens repeatedly.
And so on. This happens on and on. Why wouldn't we? We have all weather forecasts. Why wouldn't we just isolate parts of the networks, shut them down? We can live for 10 days without electricity if needed. I'm just exaggerating here the potential solution. Very simple and elegant, rather than allowing us to burn acres and acres of land. So that's one instance. The other instance is if you're thinking about the power grid, the biggest problem with the power grid, the biggest risk is over voltage. So you don't have to have all the sophisticated and expensive solutions. You can just add little physical devices that are preventing the over voltage. So even if attacker comes into your network and then successfully penetrate, there is very limited how much they can do, because you already have a physical protection that is not going to allow them to damage your network. You can prevent attacks from spreading. You can have very elegant and simple solutions. So that's where talent is coming, not just knowing what is the technical solution, but having creative ideas that are addressing risk at its core. Right. And solving it elegantly, not just throwing more money into the problem.
Right. And I'm sure while you're in the process of solving these problems with the government body, there are protocols to follow, and there are deadlines which, when they're underfunded, you don't, I'm sure those are some different kinds of challenges. Of course, that we can have the conversation at some other point. But my takeaway from your answer is also that it all starts maybe at our home, then city, maybe our city, our town, then it goes, of course, to the state and then the country. So the critical infrastructure is basically involved at every step of the way. We'll talk more about that on the other side of the break. And viewers, when we come back, we'll take a quick look at the CyberWatch News Flash. We'll be right back after these messages. Lalit and Margareta, thank you so very much for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, with our special guests, we continue to talk about securing critical infrastructure. But before we continue with our conversation, let's take a quick look at the CyberWatch News Flash. UN adopts first global AI resolution to protect human rights. The United Nations General Assembly unanimously adopted the world's first global resolution on artificial intelligence. This non-binding resolution aims to address the potential risks posed by AI systems and safeguard human rights. So yet another significant news, Lalit, over here, which is important for our viewers to know. Let me get your reaction as we've been discussing continuously from our previous episode and over here as well about securing critical infrastructure. Folks who want to get into the risk management, with cybersecurity, they want to be part of and they want to contribute for critical infrastructure. What should be their career path?
See, there's multiple ways we all can contribute, and it can start as early as in the school systems.
Oh, yeah?
Yes. So think of how many kids go for different volunteer programs across different or competitions and stuff. Make it very innovative competition, or contributions that at even the high school level, and you'll be surprised how talented these kids are. We talk about the skill shortage.
Right.
These kids can really play and really help. Let them go to municipalities. Let them go to the infrastructure. Get them the exposure. Let them do certain things so that they can learn the actual application of the critical infrastructure. See, it's not pleasure sitting at the airport when winter storm hits you and you're waiting for days to catch your flight.
Right.
This is a real life example.
Correct.
What if it's not because of winter storm? It was because I hacked into the system and compromised all the traffic systems, right? Same thing. Now, with what it's going to happen is, now you're getting people interested at the kids high school level and everything, university. It should be part of the curriculum, not internships. You got to really do some programs which are related to critical infrastructure. All of a sudden, what kind of workforce have you created? Mm-hmm. And plus, they are getting the real life experience. Then comes really where each and every one of us, when we really doing different kind of volunteer programs, we should give back to small businesses. We should give back to underprivileged. We can also give back to the critical infrastructure agencies. A valuable time and contributions that can really take you to the next level.
Right.
And of course,
and it's giving back to the community, basically.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And then complemented with some government funding and promoting those programs so that they can elevate the presence of that.
Right.
So it's not really something rocket science, because we've been doing this in other forms. This is a very, I would say in a very innovative and creative way of bringing workforce and talent, but also securing the digital world of tomorrow.
But this certainly, is like a moral responsibility that you said, and you can start as early as starting it at a school or at a college level. But if somebody wants to navigate their career path, as I still, the thought doesn't go out of my mind when we were talking with Avni Desai, the CEO of Shellman. She said, more than 2 million job opportunities are going to come along in the cybersecurity space, So in the cybersecurity domain itself, there are various career paths that one can really follow. And when we talk more specifically about risk management and critical infrastructure, I'm sure you both can help connect the dots that, okay, this could be the milestones, these could be the opportunities that you could work on and get to work with some of the prominent companies. Now, it could be that you work and contribute at the government sector or at the private sector.
You just said the key word, it's getting into the risk. For the most part, people get into cybersecurity work through compliance or through some technical type of work. But that is still a very narrow sector. What is the trend, rightfully so at this time and age, is actually connecting what are the technologies, what are the risks related to the business when it comes to technology or to the public safety or to the critical infrastructure, and then performing appropriate activities. So in my opinion, the paths to get to cybersecurity jobs are still the same, whether it's compliance or technology, maybe even sometimes through legal types of work, but critical for success is to get the connection between technologies and what we are trying to protect and getting to the risk in addition to cybersecurity.
So the theoretical information, the theoretical curriculum stays the same. Is that what it is, or is it anyway different?
That's where your IQ comes on stage, your ability to find solutions in new circumstances. That's why you have to be creative, not just throw technology on the top of technology and having a full sense of security and solving the problem.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And Vikas, think of, again, simplify this thing, right? physical world, who fights your battles today? You got firefighters in every city, in every
Correct.
community, right? You got cops and sheriffs and stuff. In the digital ecosystem, just simply like forget about risk management, cyber, and everything else.
Right.
You'll need cyber warriors, the cyber firefighters,
Right.
all of them. If you don't feel like this is like theoretical, no.
Right.
Very soon this will be real. You're going to need that kind of workforce to really fight the digital wars or the digital risks. And Margareta made a very good point. Don't look from the angle of technology, cybersecurity, or compliance. Very soon you'll have to start looking from the risk lenses.
Yeah.
Why do you need cops and the police and the sheriff? Because there's a risk of the physical thing. There's a risk of fire, that's why you need firefighters.
Right.
There's a risk of somebody invading the country, that's why you have Marine and Army and all. Change that to digital frontier and the answers will be very clear.
And so that gives another opportunity for the people who want to take the career to the next level. Obviously, let's say if there are individuals who are engineers, but they want to navigate and, take a detour of their career path and get into, let's say, risk management over here, their engineering will be a good background.
Starting point,
which will be a big asset actually for them. And then maybe a bit more knowledge and study that they put time and effort that they put into AI and, for risk management. I think this will really enhance their career path, right?
Not only engineers.
Right.
There's a whole domain of psychologists.
Right.
Studying how the bad actors think, how the good actors should be thinking.
Many people who are neuroscientists.
There's a whole chain of doctors and stuff getting trained into not the human psychology part, but into the med and biosecurity side of the house.
Right.
So it's not about one or the other domain, you have to be technical. See, when you said engineer, the first thought that comes to my mind, you are again saying is technical.
Right.
No.
Right.
All I'm just saying is you don't even have to be technical to fight either critical infrastructure security or be a cyber warrior.
Right. I'm glad we spoke about, critical infrastructure in its entirety. We spoke about what critical infrastructure is at the basic level. We spoke about the challenges and the opportunities in this area as well when we talk about the career path. So thank you so much for your knowledge and expertise, Margareta and Lalit. Really appreciate that. Viewers, this brings us to the end of our tonight's episode of CyberWatch. If you want to write us, send in your questions to cyberwatch@tvasiausa.com. And CyberWatch, remember, is powered by DigitalXForce and iTrustXForce. If you want to reach out to Lalit Ahluwalia directly, Lalit, what's the best way out?
Reach out through our websites, DigitalXForce.com or iTrustXForce.com, or through our social media pages. We're always available to help out.
Lalit and Margareta, once again, thank you so very much for joining us and giving us your time and knowledge. Viewers, this brings us to the end of our tonight's episode. Until next time, this is Vikas Nangia signing off. Thank you for watching.